Just as the British pound, it was known as the sterling. When Britain ruled the world, the British sterling was the currency which everybody dealt in. And after the World War II, when, I should say, Britain and the whole Europe went broke, the strongest country was the US. But the foresight of the US have to be appreciated. After the recession in 1929, they started what was known as the rebuilding of America. That's what I would call it. They started building roads, infrastructure to such a great extent that even today people are in awe of it and people try to copy it. So they had a vision, they had a focus. But many of the Eastern countries and African countries which were colonized had no focus. Their focus, first thing, was to come out of the colonial regime. And hence they could not, and after the coming out of the colonial region, how are they going to face the world? The colonizers had left the colonies barren. Not even barren, I would say they have scraped the bottom of the barrel, and I think there must have been holes in the barrel because of the reason that there was nothing there. Even if we poured something into it, it was leaking. To that extent, the colonizers had finished the economies of the colonies and gone. So the colonies had to start from zilch. And because of that, they had no money, they had no resources, they had no understanding of how to run an economy or run a country. All of them had to start tying up their bootlaces and they started afresh. But the focus was not there because of this background. So we should not blame ourselves that we are not developed as much as the US or how Germany, etc. Because we are not colonized after that, and we were colonized earlier. And so we have to approach it from a different angle completely. But even after so many years, we did not develop a focus. We tried to develop a focus originally by investing all the resources into, as I told you earlier in my earlier thing, that we brought into focus and we brought out the economy out of the rut it was in. But because of the lack of focus, the problem that arose was that nobody could challenge the hegemony of the US. And the Western nation caught on to the coattails of the US and they became prosperous. And the colonies were left barren. They were not able to attract the investment which they could have capable of. That is why China went a step forward. It hung on to the coattails of the US, not directly but indirectly, by saying, yes, you get rid of all your polluting industries, your manufacturing, everything, we will give it to you. And that gave China a big boost, because to build those companies and to get the products into the US and the US to sell its product outside, they required manufacturing facilities and they required infrastructure. They poured money into China and China grew. India lost its focus, as I already told you, and they did not grow as China. But all of a sudden, we woke up, and one of the great things was this BRICS. Now, coming back, because of the hold the dollar had over the world economy, they were able to threaten countries. Independent countries were threatened. By what? They were sanctioned. You will not be able to see. When you make a currency, a universal currency, or you had made it possible for it to become a universal currency, and everybody believed in that currency and everybody was willing to go along with it, you suddenly pull the plug. What will happen to those economies? What will happen to those people? It is sheer, I would say, in a common knowledge, I would say it is what you call bullying. And somewhere the shake-up had to take place. It was not that people are anti-US, people are anti anything. People had to bring something into their own economies to grow their economies so that somewhere these kind of bullying tactics can be reduced and they can be, a dialogue can take place as nation to nation, not one person sitting on top as a king and ruling over his subjects. Because that is what the dollar became. It became a ruler, not the US government. The dollar became the ruler. And people who manage the dollars, the mutual fund, the financial circle, the federal, the banks, they started ruling the world because they controlled the Senate, they controlled the Congress, they controlled everything. So that had to be broken. And the opportunity arose because of the Russian-Ukraine war. When the Russian-Ukraine war started, when the sanctions fell into place, and the dollar stock, everybody was depending on the dollar. When there was a shift, when the global shift took place, okay, now we have an opportunity, a small light, a light in the tunnel can be seen. So let us use that light. What was it? Let us deal in our own currencies with the international world. And one of the big things what India started using that benefit. And today, the Indian rupee is now being used in 8 countries. The digital economy of the UPI, which is known as the UPI, has now penetrated 8 economies. And today, NRIs are able to use the UPI to pay in India. Rather than converting their dollars into rupees, they can use their bank account here in India and do the UPI transactions. Singapore just now introduced the UPI into its account, that between India and Singapore. So, it is now there is a space which is opening out, not anti-dollar. It is not de-dollarization as the world economists are talking about. No, it is not de-dollarization. It is using your strengths, using your economic strengths, using your fundamental monetary exchange, and in order not to get pressurized by the world, especially by the dollar, to feel inadequate and not providing services or production facilities to your countrymen. So that is where we should differentiate between an anti-US stand or an anti-dollar stand. I'm very clear in my mind. It is not an anti-dollar meaning or it is an anti-US. It is that people and the economies of the world are recognizing that they have their own strengths. Their economies have their own strengths. For example, India has the largest middle class and largest purchasing power today. If it really grows, it is going to, the world cannot match the purchasing power of India. And we have the capabilities of setting up manufacturing units. If India really takes off, there will not be anybody to challenge it, which I would say is creating a fear in the world economies. All these years, the shield was the dollar. But today, when the shield is weakening, there can be a penetrative force. And that force is what people are worried about. And one of them is the Asian countries coming together. Russia, China, and Brazil, the largest economies are coming together. And they are willing to state, yes, we will deal in our own currencies. We will not say that we are de-dollarizing. What we are saying is, yes, we will use our economies, our monies to exchange among ourselves at our own agreed rate. So that if there is an increase in the dollar rate because of the interest rates, etc., that will not affect our economies directly. There will be an indirect effect, but it will not directly impact us, and based on which our economies have to keep on catching up, always playing catch up. And we'll never come out of the morass. So today, the activity that is happening in the world is not, I would not say de-dollarization. It is understanding the inherent strengths of the capabilities of the independent economies, and they are working together so that they will be able to use their own monies, which is available with them, which can be used to exchange products and services. And the dollar is not going to be affected because of the reason that we are not anti-dollar. We are neither anti-US or anti-dollar. So that is the perceptive that we should, in my perception, that is what arises. We are not going against the US. We are not going against Europe. What we are doing is that these countries, Asian countries, including Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina, everybody are willing to look within themselves. Yes, let us take a leaf of what the US has done. By strengthening our economies, we will be able to strengthen our rupees or lira or ruble or anything for that matter, so that our people, our currency is strengthened and there are opportunities for our economies to rise up and come up to the requirements of the international standards which everybody praise. So that is what the objective is today. It is not anti-US, anti-West, de-dollarization, etc. And my perception is that the world is now waking up to a new system of economic operation. I wanted to read something out of the newspapers, but I think I'll keep it aside and let me bring it forward tomorrow. Thank you very much.